First of all, hopefully you can see the image. I just want you all to stare at the image for a couple of seconds and see what you make of it. There should be a distinct difference and a different feeling for both of these. And the main observations to take is about things like space, the amount of people, the layout, the structure of things. But you'll notice one on the left is full of people, sun lounges are packed in, hedgerows and bushes and trees are just growing quite freely. The one on the right, distinct lack of people. But you'll notice other things like sun lounges being a good 5-10 meters apart, palm trees, nicely spaced, strategically placed, design-led. The difference being clearly that one is more luxurious, more expensive than the other. And a lot of this comes down to space and design and something being thought through in the first instance. So I want to use an example that's real world, but then how that applies itself moving forward into positioning for any brand. None of these are wrong, by the way. They're both right because they're both doing exactly what they're supposed to do. And maybe the one on the left, you may have come to this particular website to make that booking. So EasyJet operates in that lower end of the market. That's where it wants to be for everything it does. EasyHotel, EasyJet, Easy Internet. You know what you're going to get and what you're going to expect. You might not expect the dead man in the pool that they've got on the homepage here, which is a bit of a faux pas. But that's what you're going to expect with EasyJet. And, you know, it's managing those expectations, which is part of the positioning, because people want to get what they believe they're going to get in all parts of a customer journey. Then you've got another site, which is slightly less known, operating in a slightly more premium space called Sovereign. And the difference between the websites, obviously there's color differences. This is black and white compared to orange and white. The imagery is celebrated more. There's fewer people on the beach, for example. There's definitely issues with this from a positioning perspective. The iconography, I would say, at the top for the concierge and 50 years experience is a bit cheap. So there's room for improvement to position this a little bit better. But you can see the difference between the two. And they're both positioning themselves in the space that they want to be positioned in. You've got other companies, again, going back to EasyJet. Jet2 operates in a similar space. Used to do flights, then operate holidays as well. And you'll notice, again, a blurred image, a packed beach of brollies, a £50 per person discount, all the offers going on possible to say, you know, you're going to get a bargain, you're going to get a deal here. But like a lot of brands, they've tried to go into other areas. And this is where the brand doesn't stretch far enough for me. And personally think they've made some mistakes. But across the top of the website, you might notice a tab that says Indulgent Escapes. And what they've done to go into a new territory, a new market, operating maybe at the higher end, is basically gone, we'll have the same website we've got at the lower end, and we'll just duplicate the website and we'll stick a new logo on it. And that's essentially what they've done. Then they've underpinned it with Jet2 Holidays, which I think has no benefits to them whatsoever, because they've gone down the path of saying we're going to be Indulgent Escapes, maybe operate at a slightly higher end. They may as well just stick with Indulgent Escapes and have it as a separate entity. And if you dig deep into terms and conditions, you might find it's owned by Jet2 Holidays, but you don't. It offers no reward to me looking at a higher end holiday that Jet2 Holidays is directly associated with it. And then it shows that they can't quite change their behavior, because on the image, it's got save big this September, October, £100 discount. So they're already reverting back to what they do for Jet2 itself, which is not what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to achieve a separation between the two brands. I, the other month, went to 2 different hotels within a given month. The one on the left is a place called Grantley Hall, which is north of Leeds. You get met on arrival at a gate, so you get met again when you park up. They take your car and park it for you. They walk you into the hotel. They offer you a free drink. They check you in personally and walk you to your room. Very different experience, a great experience. EasyHotel in Sheffield, completely different experience. You wander in, there's no one really there. You can kind of check in yourself. You can use a card. You can go into the lift. You can get into your room. But it's still personalised. My name appeared in different places. It's exactly what I expected. So they both can achieve a level of customer service and personalization, which is what I might be looking for, but they're doing it in two very different ways. And obviously the one on the left costs more money, there's more people involved, there's more grandeur, there's more theatre. And the one on the right, easier, doing exactly what they need to do. They're trying to strip back as many costs as they possibly can, still give you a good experience, and manage your expectation because you're looking for something cheap in that instance. Then you've got other situations that are completely different level, a level that I would clearly never engage with. But this is a handbag that is worth about 2 million, I believe. So you're not going to find the price online. You're not going to be able to buy it online. This is a high-level experience where you have to go into a store, be invited in as a VIP guest, and go through quite a long process to get anywhere near the opportunity to have a bag like this anyway. So there's different scales, and it all comes down to, you know, how much personalization you can bring to the table, how exclusive you can make something. And the more you go down that path, the more expensive obviously something's going to become. And then there's also fine lines within positioning as well. So in the car market, you've got all of these different car brands. They're positioning themselves from high value to low value to high quality to low quality. And you can see a difference between Kia and Porsche at the other end. You know, they're extremes. But then there's fine lines between Volkswagen, VW, and Audi, for example, where you might be shopping somewhere in the region of 20 to 28,000, let's say. You can afford that budget. Your options might be a Polo or a Golf or an A1, or it might be the BMW 1 Series. An 8 grand, you know, movement from one to the other, you could argue seems quite big, but on the grand scheme of things, from cars being 15 grand to maybe $250,000, we're shopping in a particular space. And the fine lines are the perception of each of these brands, but then also when you start to look into the detail, you might have a slightly better dashboard, a slightly wider wheels. There'll be some things that make it feel a little bit better. The door might sound better when it shuts and things like that. So there's slight fine lines in positioning where you're carving out an absolute space in the market. And then there's the extremities of a low budget airline and holiday provider compared to a high-end provider. And you need to find exactly where you need to be in your marketplace. Also, things like colour and space are massively important. Space I talked about with the sun loungers, for example. That also applies to obviously the design of the website for that particular holiday. That space and colour choice will make a big difference. And we can see that in the supermarket world. This is pretty much the landscape of the supermarkets when I was a kid. Iceland being at the lower level, and then kind of mid-range colours going up to Sainsbury's and Waitrose, which reduce the amount of colours they have. They use more white space. The stores are more designed. The aisles in Waitrose are wider. But as these all have matured over the years, it obviously allowed Lidl and Aldi to come in at the lower end again. But you'll notice that they are full of colour, childlike colours, primary colours, colours that fight and clash with each other, which is perfectly fine for what they're trying to achieve. They're trying to suggest that you might be able to get a more cost-effective basket, and their stores are single brick story buildings. The food doesn't really come out the packaging that it arrived in off the lorry. All these things they can cut back to get you a lower basket. So they're brilliant at doing that. And Waitrose are brilliant at doing the opposite. Nothing wrong with either business, clearly. It's all about choice, but they're deciding where they want to operate within a marketplace. Then you've got other things like feelings and associations. So we all know the Pepsi Coke battle, and if you're old enough like me, you'll remember the Pepsi challenge on a taste challenge, and Pepsi typically won out. The problem with that is you've got to have bought it in the first place, and that's where Coke have always won out because their brand has always been a lot stronger. It's been consistent. They know exactly what they stand for. Pepsi keep changing their identity. They keep changing who they're trying to target. They sometimes go towards extreme sports, which is obviously a smaller audience. Whereas Coke have just associated themselves generally with a broad phrase of happiness. And that's what they try and align themselves with, whether that's in their photography and their video and the overall feeling of a drink, but also other associations where they've influenced the colour of Christmas and Santa Claus. And we all know when the TV advert comes on. This is really important stuff because when scientific tests have been produced on both of these brands, if they show any of the advertising of either of them before you taste the drink, Coke will actually come out better tasting because of the way that your brain and the chemicals in your brain actually move around. They get excited by the happiness and the feeling of Christmas to the point where Coke tastes better. Whereas if you don't see any of the advertising, and Pepsi used to do a taste test, Pepsi would taste better. But you've got to buy the drink in the first place. So Coke wins out most of the time based on its quality of its brand and its overall positioning of happiness as well. Then you've got placement, and where you put your brand is equally important, which needs to be thought through from a strategic perspective. So Maserati here, for example, they're known to promote and sell their cars and showcase their cars at events where people are buying private jets. Now, that makes complete sense, because if you're buying a private jet at 2 million and up, the car, which is 150,000, let's say, is not much to ask, really. It's kind of something you're just going to add into your shopping basket. And for most people, it's probably a little bit like saying, do you want fries with that, to be fair? It's just operating at a completely different level. It understands its audience. If they're buying private jets at 2 million, a car at 150 or 200,000 is basically some fries with a burger for them. So they know exactly where they need to put it, and they're happy to do that. They're not trying to appeal to everybody. And McDonald's, on the other hand, obviously can appeal to a lot more people, but it will find offers and rewards and decide exactly where it's going to put it. So this is actually on the back of a bus ticket. So make some assumptions here. They're probably thinking that's a younger audience, possibly people with less money, using public transport. Perfect opportunity to promote our product. So each of the brands at extreme level, again, are also picking exactly where they want to place their product and their brand to an audience that they've already identified. And then a little challenge to yourself. You don't have to join in at this point. There is a quiz coming up in a second. But if you've got a special occasion, you know, you've had your choices here today. You could have picked one of the holidays that we had on show. You could pick a certain car, anything like this. You've got a special occasion, there's an anniversary, let's say, with your partner, and you're going to take them out for a meal. We've all got choices. You may, on a special occasion, want to increase your budget, possibly, and do something a little bit more special. So I'm going to show you 3 menus, and you can just decide in your own heads if you're going to do something really special and get those brownie points that you need. Which of these 3 restaurants would you choose to go to? This is your first one. This is your second one. And then this is your third one. So it's quite obvious, but sometimes I think people miss the point that they all offer food and they're all presenting the menu in a very different way. But as humans, over years and years and years, we've realized that those 3 go up in quality and price just through a visual layout of a menu, for example. So within those 3 environments, well, no doubt that the first one probably has the food in a light box above the restaurant as well, which probably isn't even the food that you actually get at the end of it either. The middle one feels like it might be on every high street, possibly, but still of a decent standard. And this final one that we're on at the moment clearly is more exclusive. It might only be the only restaurant you can go to. So it's how you present yourself visually, clearly, but it's all the other components to the brand that need to be matched. Otherwise, you break the promise that you've put to a potential customer in the first instance. And then the other thing is to think differently. Too many brands come into a market because they've left another company, let's say, and just want to do it exactly as the other company did it, but just want to own it themselves. And there's no real thought as to, okay, well, what were the frustrations? How could we actually tackle this in a different way? So I use this image quite a lot, and people may or may not know who it is, but it's a guy called Dick Fosbury, famous for the Fosbury flop. And he changed the way that people went about approaching a high jump. And he started that when he realized that they were changing where you actually landed. You used to land on sawdust, and then they started to put a bit of a mattress there. And he realized that you could change the way that you jumped then, because most people would jump in belly first or doing a scissor kick jump because they needed to land on sawdust and protect themselves, where the mattress allowed you to jump however you wanted to. So he then chose to do the Fosbury flop and jump over backwards. And he increased the height, and obviously everyone followed. And it'd be really strange today if anyone did the high jump in a different way. But it was his vision of thinking differently that's achieved that greater success. And one brand that I've worked with, and operated with for all my career, 26 years, could only be found in the design industry. It was the only place you would find a computer, because even then it was design-led. It understood that it needed to speak to that audience. And for a long, long time, that was the only place it resided. And then they opened up the market with some of those colourful monitor computers, if you're old enough to remember them. And then they got into the flat screen monitors. And nearly every household seemed to have them, even though they might not know how to turn them on. But they looked good in the house. So if we're going to have a computer in my hallway that people might see, I want one that actually looks good. Whether I can use it or not was kind of up for question. And then obviously every other brand that operates in that space has followed suit. And Apple still is design-led, has its faults, has its haters. Again, every brand should have that. You should have a brand that stands for something. People like it, and some people don't. But Apple is design-led and does like to try and think differently. And people can argue that as much as they like, but I do believe that is what ultimately they stand behind. So over to you guys now. So kind of fastest fingers first, but Amy will capture this at the end and say who's won. But this book is up for offer. So the Future Beyond brands are called Love Marks. So some of the best brands on the planet and how they operate. I've got 3 visuals I'm going to show you. It's an A or B choice. So type in A or B in the comments based on what you think is the right answer. And then we will let you know the winner afterwards. So the first one, if you look at both of these, I want you to put A or B, which brand do you think bases itself on being more challenger?
Yep, everyone's going for A here.
Okay, so that in itself is positioning. They position themselves in all the markets they go into as trying to disrupt it and challenge themselves. And so there's a bit more sexiness to Virgin as well. So they want to change the way that people see flights. BA might be deemed a bit stuffy, for example. Then big brands, both really successful brands, we can't argue that. But if you were going to pick one, A or B, which one would you say was more cool?
Mostly A's we've got here, a few B's thrown into the mix too.
Yeah. Okay. And then next one's easy because it's based on a lot of what we talked about today, the extremes of 2 things. But have a look at these, A or B, which one is most expensive?
Yeah, everybody knows knows the champagne, going for B.
So, but what is interesting, though, obviously, the Debon brand that I've never heard of is obviously trying to replicate some of the colour and labelling of the other one, to kind of maybe hoodwink a few people. But the obvious part is when the price is associated with it. So Debon's like £8.50 plus, and as you can see, Verve can go from anywhere between £47.50 and above. So there's a little game for yourselves. Amy will work out who got all 3 right. And then we'll narrow that down, pull it out of a hat, and someone will be sent the book. Final few things just around copywriting, for example. So positioning comes into everything that you do, and that can be choosing the right word. So on the left, you'll see Hermes asking people whether they want to join them from a recruitment ad perspective. We cordially invite high caliber talent to join our Hermes team in Hong Kong. So they've picked every single word there to make sure that it aligns to the people they want to attract. McDonald's, no intro at all, just got lots of jobs. Anyone fancy a job? We've got a job for you. Full-time, part-time, guaranteed minimum hours. No real personality or character to it. Just 2 extremes of how people might approach something and kind of expected from both of those brands. And then a little bit of tone from ourselves. We're basically offering anyone who's attended today and had the patience to hang around as well after the few errors at the start, a free positioning review. So if you have a brand, own a brand, or you work for a company and responsible for the brand, we'll do a free positioning review for you if you want to follow up. let us know either in the chat now, or you can speak to Amy directly and we'll book that in for you, just see where your brand's currently operating. And it will cover off these types of things like pricing, marketing, product offering, customer service, customer journey, benefits versus emotions, visual style, messaging and tone. So we'll have a little look at that as a free review and see whether we can help you in your path to success. And that is all. So again, thanks a lot for your patience. A bit of a disaster, but we got there in the end. Thank you for your time. Have a good day, and no doubt catch you soon.